Welcome to Take a Closer Look, a series of videos on works of art in the collection of the Flint Institute of Arts. I am Tracy Glab, Curator of Collections and Exhibitions. Today, I'm going to briefly talk to you about one of the mysteries that frequently face art historians and curators. In this case, the identity of a medieval sculpture. How can we identify something without any explanatory text or inscriptions? What clues do we have to go on? This French limestone sculpture dates to the 15th century and was given to the museum in 2000 by members of the Kelly family in memory of their parents, Catherine and Raymond Kelly. When this work was purchased, it was thought there might be more to it than meets the eye. The sculpture came to us with the title of Female Saint, but there are visual clues to this work that caused us to doubt this generic identity. So who is she? In art history, we can often identify subject matter from ancient and medieval sources through visual clues known as attributes. Obviously, the long hair and dress clue us in that she's a female, but what else can we see? In her right hand, she holds a rectangular shaped object with architectural details in the Gothic style. If this object represents a building, she could be associated with Saint Barbara, who is the patron saint of architecture because of her legend. According to tradition, Barbara was the daughter of a rich pagan who kept her locked in a tower. She became a Christian without her father's permission, and when he left on a business trip, she persuaded the workmen to put in a third window in her tower as a symbol of the Trinity. When her father returned home and found out her secret, she ran away. Eventually, she was caught, tortured, and then beheaded. I think we can rule out Barbara, however, because our female figure is not holding a tower, which is most often what is shown with Barbara, not a generic building. So if she's not Barbara, then who is she? Let's take another look at the object she holds. Could it represent something else? If what she's holding is a miniature building, could she be a saint associated with a specific building? In medieval and Renaissance art, saints such as Saint Catherine of Siena and the Virgin Mary are often shown holding or being presented religious buildings, such as chapels, that are dedicated to them. Here are a few examples. Another option is that this object is not a building at all, but a reliquary, which often took the form of a building or mimic architectural styles. Reliquaries are boxes that held parts of saints that were venerated and believed to perform miracles. Here are two reliquaries that look very similar to the object that our sculpture holds, with the Gothic arches and tracery. Furthermore, sometimes statues themselves held reliquaries. Here's an image of Saint Foy on the left and the Virgin Mary on the right, who both hold reliquaries. But before we come to any conclusions, let's keep looking for clues. The second most obvious clue is what she holds in her other hand, a book. According to legend, the Virgin Mary was said to be reading the prophecy of Isaiah when the angel Gabriel visits her. During this visit, where she conceives the child Jesus, known as the Annunciation, Gabriel announces, hence the word Annunciation, to the Virgin Mary that she will give birth to Jesus, the Messiah. Notice in the painting on the left, which shows the angel Gabriel and the Virgin Mary together, she holds a small book in her hand, as does our statue. The book is not just any book, but most likely a small book of hours, seen here on the right. The Book of Hours was a devotional prayer book, often small, that was illuminated with pictures that corresponded with text. Medieval books were also composed of folded parchment, which was springy and inclined to cockle in various temperatures and humidities, unless it was held securely shut by the gentle pressure of clasps, which you can also see on our sculpture. At one time, there was writing present on the open pages, which was clearly intended for the viewer to read, but it has since worn off. Examination under blue light, seen on the right, did not reveal anything conclusive, unfortunately. So if the book cannot give us conclusive evidence, what else is there? Another clue is the extensive amount of paint still remaining on the statue: blue on her cloak, red on her dress, and gold on her hair. Here's a detail. Blue and gold were among the most costly colors to produce during this time and were associated with purity and royalty. The medieval paintings of the Virgin, and here are a few examples, she was almost always shown with a blue cloak, red dress, and gold or blonde hair. These were her special colors that were not seen on anyone else, but one of the key problems with our sculpture is that it's missing her counterpart, the angel Gabriel. And she holds that box for building. Or does she? Clue number 4 is the most compelling of them all, because we know for a fact that the hand holding the object was added at a later date. Here's a detail of the repair. If you compare the two hands in this image, you can see that the hands were not made by the same sculptor. The added hand holding the object is more clumsy and lacks the finesse of the one holding the book. Also, in depictions of the Annunciation, the Virgin is usually shown with her right hand raised in surprise and fear. And in the image on the right, which depicts the Annunciation, notice her proper right hand held up and her left hand holding a book. So what can we say? Have we solved the mystery? I think the evidence does point to the sculpture being at one time the Virgin Mary in the Annunciation, based on the book, paint color, and repaired hand. But why was she given this attribute that would so confuse future scholars? Obviously, the sculpture was repurposed for a different use, but why? There are too many unknowns to make a definite conclusion, but here are some theories. It's still Mary, but not Annunciate. Box could refer to the reliquary that's associated with her or to a building or chapel that had been dedicated to her. The statue was removed at some point from its original location, and without the accompanying angel Gabriel, it may not have been known that she was the Virgin Annunciate. Then she was repaired to reflect a different person, of course, also a saint. The conclusion is that we cannot call her the Virgin Mary definitively without knowing what was written on the book or her original location. We use the generic title of female saint, which technically still applies to Mary, to reflect the statue's altered history. She most likely was once Mary, but now is an anonymous saint.